The first article from Environment in the month of October is shallow water mining. So recently a group of researchers has suggested that shallow water mining is in direct conflict with biodiversity conservation and sustainability goals as the activity poses severe environment risks. So basically about shallow water mining metals such as gold, cobalt and copper from a depth of 200 meters below the sea is known as shallow water mining. Now it is considered relatively low risk and low cost option. These are already underway in Namibia and Indonesia, and projects have also been proposed in Mexico, New Zealand, and Sweden. Now, the harmful impact over here is that it requires removing large amount of sediments, and it is not a substitute for deep sea mining. Moreover, removing these sediments can trigger local extinction, changes in the species composition, and other issues could be direct impact on the water quality and release of harmful substances from the sediments, and also disturbance from noise and light. Let's move on to the second topic, which is Global Registry of Fossil Fuels. So recently, the world's first global registry of fossil fuels has been launched. It has been launched by Carbon Tracker and Global Energy Monitor. In the study, they have covered approximately 75% of the global reserves, and they are creating a database for tracking world's fossil fuel production, reserves, and emissions. Now, the key analysis from this report is that USA and Russia have enough fossil fuels still underground, untapped, to exhaust the remaining carbon budget of the world. Now, these reserves alone would generate 3.5 trillion tons of greenhouse gas emissions, which is more than the emissions produced since the Industrial Revolution. Now, of these fields which were studied in the report, Ghar oil field in Saudi Arabia has the most potency for emission. Let's move on to the third topic, which is roadmap for legacy waste management. So recently, the Center for Science and Environment, that is CSE, has released a roadmap for legacy waste management in a bid to support India's garbage-free cities agenda. Now, the term legacy waste refers to any waste that are collected and kept for years at some barren land. Now, according to the Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0, mandates that cities in India should clear their legacy waste sites. And there has been a deadline set for clearing these landfills. The deadline for less than a million cities is 2023 March 31st. And for more than a million cities, that is the population of more than a million cities, the deadline has been set to March 31st, 2024. Now, the roadmap for CSE on legacy waste has a 7-point agenda, 7-point roadmap, and it includes a management plan. It wants us to ensure maximum utilization of the recovered fractions. It wants us to reuse the reclaimed lands, and they want us to develop standards for gainful use of the recovered fractions. They want to incentivize management of recovered materials. They want to build capacity of urban departments, and they want to ensure sustainable operations of sanitary landfills. Now let's move on to the fourth topic, which is new targets under National Clean Air Program. So recently, the government of India has set a new target of 40% reduction in particulate matter concentration in cities covered under the National Clean Air Program by 2026. So the National Clean Air Program was launched by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change in 2019. It is being implemented in 132 cities across the country. So under this program, the cities are required to quantify improvements starting 2020 to 2021, and it requires a 15% or more reduction annually in the average PM10 concentration, increase in good air days to at least 200. Now, for dispersing the funds, CPCB, that is Central Pollution Control Board, is only considering levels of PM10. However, PM2.5 are smaller, more dangerous particle, and they are not being considered because of the lack of equipments. Now, the analysis of CSE on NCAP program is that only 43 NCAP cities have adequate PM2.5 data for the period of 2019 to 2021. On the other hand, out of the 46 NCAP cities with adequate data, 21 recorded significant improvement in their PM2.5 values, with 5% or more decline between 2019 and 2021. Now, only about 50% of the NCAP cities have real-time monitoring, and this real-time monitoring stations have been constantly increasing since 2019. To 2022. Now, the present and new targets under NCAP are: the present target is to achieve 20 to 30% reduction in particulate matter concentrations by 2024, and the government has set a new target of reduction of around 40% reduction by 2026. Now, let's move on to the fifth topic, which is revised graded response action plan for Delhi-NCR. Now, the revised graded response action plan kicks in whenever the air quality deteriorates to a certain limit. The Supreme Court has mandated Environment Pollution Control Authority to come up with such a plan. It is applicable to the NCR region, which includes regions of Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, and Rajasthan. So, under the revised Graded Response Action Plan, restrictions on polluting activities will be dependent on AQI, that is Air Quality Index, rather than PM 2.5 and PM 10 concentrations. Now, the Response Action Plan for Delhi NCR is divided into 4 stages of air quality, which are stage 1, 2, 3, and 4, ranging from poor, very poor, severe, and severe plus. The cutoffs placed are 201, that is 200, 300, 400, and 450. Above 450 AQI, it is considered severe plus. Now let's move on to the sixth topic, which is climate tipping point. Now, according to a study, the climate crisis has driven a world to a brink of multiple disastrous tipping points. Now, what are these climate tipping points? These are markers of a larger climate system which, when triggered beyond a threshold, perpetuates warming on its own. Now, IPCC definition of climate tipping point is that a level of change in system properties beyond which a system reorganizes, often abruptly, and does not return to the initial state even if the drivers of the change are abated. For the climate systems, it refers to a critical threshold when global or regional climate changes permanently. That is, it refers to a situation when it is too late to stop effects of climate change. Now, one of the most talked about tipping point involves the collapse of West Antarctica ice sheet. Now, this West Antarctica ice sheet, if it melts, it alone has the capacity to rise the sea levels beyond about 11 feet, that is 3.3 meters. And if all the glaciers or ice caps melt, sea level would end up rising about 230 feet, which is about 70 meters. Now, the key findings of the study on climate tipping points is that 5 dangerously tipping points may have already been passed due to the 1.1 degrees Celsius of global heating. The 9 major tipping points that might already have been crossed are relates to Amazon rainforest, that is frequent droughts, Arctic sea ice, that is massive losses in the Arctic sea ice, a slowdown in the Arctic Atlantic circulation since 1950, increase in fires in the boreal forest, ice loss accelerating in the Greenland ice sheet, mass die-offs in the coral reefs, melting of permafrost, East Antarctica ice loss is accelerating in the Wilkins Basin. Also, we have the ice loss accelerating in the West Antarctic ice sheets. Now, all these tipping points are interconnected. That is, one of the tipping points is going to reinforce the other one. Now, the current situation is that the world is heading towards a 2 to 3 degree Celsius of global warming. And if all the net zero pledges and nationally determined contributions are implemented, it could be limited to below 2 degrees Celsius. Also, the cuts in line with the Paris agreements aims to halt the warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, let's move on to the seventh topic, which is Living Planet report. It has been released by World Wildlife Fund. It is a biennial report, which means it comes out after every 2 years, and it is produced by the Zoological Society of London. Now, the report measures how species are responding to pressure in environment due to biodiversity loss and climate change. What are the key findings related to India? So, the most vulnerable region in India is the Himalayan region and the Western Ghats. There is a decline in species, and the population of honeybees and 17 species of freshwater turtles have seen a constant decline in this period. 137 kilometers of Sundarban mangroves have been eroded since 1985. The river ecosystem is also no longer free-flowing, and this has threatened the migration of fishes. Some of the conservation efforts of India has been appreciated, like the Project Tiger. On the global front, wildlife population has seen a drop of around 69% between 1970 and 2018. Latin America and Caribbean regions have seen the largest decline of the monitored wildlife populations globally. Now, in the oceans, sharks and rays are the most affected, and by 2020, 3/4 of the sharks and rays were threatened with extinction. The most threatened species are the freshwater populations. Cycads, that are a group of seed plants, are the most threatened species. Also, the corals are declining the fastest, followed by amphibians. Now, the bramble K. melomois, a small Australian rodent, was declared extinct after the sea level rise. Now, mangroves are constantly seeing a decline at a rate of 0.13% annually. The main drivers of wildlife population decline are habitat degradation, exploitation, invasive species, pollution, climate change and disease, land use change, rising temperature, and agriculture is the most prevalent threat to amphibians. Hunting and trapping are most likely to threaten birds and mammals.